In this online digital interactive version of the Cell City project, modifications have been made in a couple of ways to help students be able to do this project online in a distance learning format or in the classroom. The first modification that's been made is that students will be given 3 different choices of how to display their Cell City. The idea behind the Cell City project is that students will make analogies between the functions of an organelle and how it works in a cell system, and the functions of different cell city entities and how they work together as a system. So for example, they could relate the chloroplast, which produces food in a plant cell, to a farm in a city that also produces food. Students can create a project that looks like a traditional map. They can also choose to write a short story, or they can make a comic strip. In this way, students are being differentiated based on their learning modalities. They're able to select something that they think they will be able to show their best job at or do their best job at. And they're able to show their creative side while also being assessed on their understanding of organelles and the organelle functions. Before students begin their project, they're going to do a brainstorming activity where they're going to think about the type of city they want to use to represent their cell. They're not limited to modern day cities. They can think back into medieval times and use a medieval city, or they can come up with some kind of a city that would be on the moon or from Star Wars or different things like that. Encourage them to use their creativity. Using that as their starting point, the type of city that they want to create in their project, they're then going to think about the different organelles that they'll be required to include in this project, and they're going to think about the function of that organelle in the cell system, and then think about what cell entity matches that function. So for example, the nucleus is in charge of holding the DNA, which are the blueprints for how everything works in the cell. So they might relate that to something like town hall or the city hall or something like that. Once they've done their brainstorm for both of the cities, they have 2 slides in which they can put up their project. So they have a couple of different ways that they can showcase their project. If they're writing a story, it's a pretty simple adding a text box, and then they can write their story directly into their notebook. If they're doing the comic strip or the map, they have a couple of different options. If they're really good with the technical part of Google Draw and things like that, they can certainly draw straight into their project, into their interactive notebook. If they would rather, they can complete their project on a piece of paper and then take a photo of it and upload that photo and then insert that into their project as well. Finally, the last piece they'll do is a follow-up questions piece. So this is the part where they're going to really think about that cell system as a system. So they're going to think about what they created, and they're going to think about what would happen if that entity was no longer there. If they actually took that entity out of the city, what would happen to the city? And then they're going to relate that back to their cell system. So what would happen if that organelle that that entity represented, what if we took that out of the cell? How would that change the cell? And then thinking about whether or not the cell could function if those organelles were missing. So we're really starting to think about the cell system as a whole of its parts and how all of those parts work together to let the system function. Hope you enjoy the project. Thanks for watching.